It's been a while since I've done a craft room tour or update, so today I'm sharing the biggest changes I've made since 2021, along with my thoughts on using Airtable for my electronic inventory now that I've been using it for a while. I've made three big physical changes, and the first one is my wall of dies. I added this die board to my craft room in mid-2022, and it immediately felt like it was always there and the perfect solution that I was looking for. Like many craft room improvements, these were the result of a couple of frustrating situations. First, I never really found the perfect way to store my nesting shape dies, the ones I use all the time to cut panels for my cards. I tried binder rings, hanging them on a command hook, putting them in DVD cases even. Second, I found myself using the same word dies over and over, and this meant searching through my drawers of stamps and dies to pull out the same thing every time I needed them. I'd seen other people using magnet sheets on their closet doors, and after a quick look on Amazon to see what was available, it kind of evolved into this idea. I bought a roll of magnetic material. I think these are meant to be printed and stick to cars for advertising. It's 12 inches by 24 inches, and then I found a cheap frame that fit around them. I like the less industrial but more finished look of these frames. They match the trim in my room, and they feel finished and just a little bit pretty. To hang them on my wall, I used the large, strong command strips, and I used 4 of them on each frame to make sure they'd really stick. As I say, they've been there since 2022, and they're still feeling very sturdy and stuck to the wall. After that, it was just a matter of choosing which dies to put up there. Most of these are my very favorites, but honestly, some of them are the ones that I just haven't used enough, and I've put them up there to remind me that they need to be used. These boards are directly above my die cutting machine. I have a whole station set up here with my plates for cutting and embossing and my tools, like the tool-in-one, some tape. And if there's a downside to this system, it's only that every once in a while, I'll grab a die and it'll slide down behind the drawers. So I invented this really fancy tool with a ruler, a strong magnet, and some tape. And this grabs any die that falls on the floor. This top drawer is where I keep my white and black scraps, which are the colors that I cut sentiments with mostly. And I've started a habit where I try to remember whenever I'm die cutting something small, like a word or a smaller shape, I cut something else, usually an extra word die cut. By creating leftover die cuts on purpose, I end up having a number of them on hand. I keep them in a box in small plastic pouches that are easy to reach for when I'm finishing a card. Even if I want to create, say, a gold die cut sentiment, it helps if I have a couple of white ones ready to go so that I can stack up that sentiment to give it some dimension. Cutting extra sentiments is a great thing to do on a day when you want to craft, but you're not feeling particularly inspired to make a card. Right now, I'm trying out the new magnetic magic mat for my die cutting with my Platinum 6. It helps hold the dies in place when I'm cutting, and it means I don't have to use tape as often as I would with a clear plastic cutting plate. My second big change is my standing desk. I felt like I was sitting too much between computer work and crafting, but I didn't want to commit to buying a whole new desk just to try it out. So I got a large computer monitor stand from Amazon, and I placed it here on top of my Alex unit, and I love it. Standing while crafting and recording videos is just so freeing. I feel less resentful about the fact that some of my supplies are out of reach and I need to walk around to get them. Of course, putting this standing station here meant that a few other changes had to happen. I moved my inks over here, and I got the big cubby off my desk. I've got a few essentials left there, and there's loads of space to put the things I'm working with while I'm standing and crafting. It also has lots of space for me to craft if I do want to sit down. I had to move my super professional photo setup over here, and I cut it down to make it smaller and minimize the amount of space it takes up on my desk. It's built from 2 pieces of white foam core to bounce white light back down onto the card that's being photographed. The base is another piece of foam core that has a little background piece of plastic that I found in the kitchen section of IKEA ages ago. This seems to work well due to all the natural light in my room, and I generally do minimal editing to my photos. The third big change I made is my pocket system. A million years ago, when we made the big change from woodblock stamps to clear stamps, a lot of us decided to keep our stamps and dies in 4x6 inch clear pockets in clear kitchen organization bins. And I did a couple of unique things with this pocket system to really make it work for me. First, I store my supplies alphabetically by manufacturer. The idea of storing it by theme always left that one big, ugly question. What do you do with the sets that work for more than one occasion or theme? So when I store by manufacturer, there's always a right answer. I also developed a color coding system to help make it easy to quickly find different types of sets. I use a Copic marker to draw a strip on the pocket insert, and I use green for sentiments, yellow for backgrounds, red for Christmas, pink for florals, and gray for dyes. So that's a snapshot of my original system. I love the color coding, the dyes on the wall, and I even like the plastic pockets where I could keep extra die cuts or stamped images with the sets for future cards. But there were a few areas that needed to be improved. Stamps in large pockets didn't fit in my bins. My embossing folders and my red rubber stamps were also stored separately and not in pockets, which meant I didn't have a place to keep any extras I made. I had a completely different system using page protectors for my stencils. And then products started changing again. Instead of just coordinating stamps and dies, now we have coordinating color stencils and even coordinating embossing folders. And it just made sense to try and keep those bundles together. So the main change I wanted to make was to put all my stamps, dies, stencils, and embossing folders and background stamps into one system of pockets and bins. Obviously, that meant I needed bigger pockets, and I chose these ones for a couple of reasons. First, they fit into some bins that I already had, so that saved me some money. Second, they're sturdy. Third, the flap was on the long side, so they're horizontal rather than vertical, which makes it so much easier to reach in and pull out the contents. I added a printed label to the outside of the pocket. In the past, my labels were on the card inserts, which meant I couldn't reuse them. All in all, it took me a couple of weeks to work through all my supplies and get them into my new pocket system. And overall, I love it. It solved the problem I had with my stuff being in different locations. And coordinating products like this are all together, regardless of what type of supply they are. Going through each item in my inventory really allowed me to reconnect with my supplies and decide whether I really wanted to keep them. And it also reminded me of some of my old loves and made me excited to pull them out again. And that leads me to the Airtable update. This is pretty quick. I'll link you to my video from earlier this year where I changed from Evernote so that you can find out how I did it and why. Since then, I've made a couple of improvements. One is that as I make cards, I add photos of them to the relevant product records. This means I can see how I've used the product in the past and when I used it. I did have a column for date used, but I decided it was better to change my naming of my photos to include the date so that by looking at the photos, I know when they were published. The other thing I've learned is how to better make use of the gallery view and filters. When you input your items, you use the grid view. You can take a screenshot here to see the columns that I use and set yours up like mine if you want to. But then you can create a gallery view, which is a lot more visual. And if you use search, you'll get a result like this, where it tells you how many there are and you have to scroll through to find them. But if you use filter, you can create a mini gallery that includes only the items you're looking for. So for instance, I can filter based on tag to see how many poinsettias I have. I know, I have a poinsettia problem. And I can filter it further by adding conditions. Maybe I want a poinsettia by a particular manufacturer, or only a certain type of product like stamps or stencils or dies. These two changes have made Airtable easier for me to use and find what I'm looking for, as well as building a resource for me to look back on. Our craft spaces are always evolving, aren't they? And that's kind of fun, actually. Thanks for joining me today. I'd love to hear how you organize your craft supplies, so tell me in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.